And you know what? It's great that it's July.
Yeah, because the weather's fantastic.
The weather's fantastic. Pride's right around the corner. We're going to talk about pride and homeownership.
Yeah, for sure.
And really, there's lots going on in the world between interest rates, inflation, what's going on south of the border. And I think we have a really cool show this time around.
Yeah, we are doing some things differently today.
We are doing some things differently. Our production team very graciously went down to the waterfront the other day, and they talked to some of our fans.
Very graciously did so.
They
talked
did.
to the fans, and what were some of the questions they were asking?
Well, they asked a bunch of different questions, and we're going to play some of the questions here on our show, and we're going to answer them.
We are going to answer them.
We are going to answer them.
You're going to answer them.
We are going to answer them live here on the air.
Really? So the unsolicited, they just ask random questions.
That's right.
Do you know what the questions are?
I was around homeownership, pride in homeownership. Some people, were retirees. Some people were looking to buy their first home. A variety of different questions, which I thought was really cool.
Okay.
And you know what? If this works,
Yeah.
we'll get our production team down on the waterfront, and maybe I'll join them in August, and we'll see if we can get some more good questions. We'll bring
good.
here to our airwaves.
And a guest today as well, of course.
We do have a guest.
Yeah.
We have Blair Patterson here from my Halifax office, and he's going to talk more about pride, and we're going to talk about everything homeownership and everything that our listeners want to hear.
All right, so I guess first of all, let's talk a bit about Pride, and because it is Pride Month, correct, here in Halifax?
Yes, Pride is the weekend after next. Is coming right around the corner.
Exactly.
Very, very soon. We already have our windows wrapped here on our Halifax office, which I think is really cool. And some of the banks already have their windows wrapped as well.
Why do you think it's important that we continue to push the Pride Month?
Well, I think some people think, hey, like Gaysian thing, we don't need to worry about.
The fight's over.
The fight's over. It's like, hey, we have equality. It's all good. But I think that's almost more the reason why we still need to be talking about pride.
That's right.
I think when you get complacent, you kind of forget. And I don't want to compare this to the U.S., but look at what happened in the U.S. around abortion, right?
Yeah.
Everything's good, but guess what? One day, not so good anymore.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's why I think it's really important to talk about pride. And it touches everyone. You know someone that's in the community, or someone that's been impacted. And I think we just need to keep the conversation going. And I think overall, the numbers from the statistics, the number of homes that are owned by queer people as a percentage is lower than straight people. So as much as we think, hey, everything's rainbows and unicorns, we're still not at that equality. Yeah, we've been having a good conversation here, and things are moving in the right direction, but I don't think things are perfect just yet.
Fundamentally, why is that? I guess you could speculate, or maybe you've got some real data as to
why. I don't have real good data, but I'm going to give you some overarching subjects, and we can talk more with Blair about that. He's seeing customers again every day, just like I am. I think one, it's socioeconomic, but we would say that just as much for queer people as we would for other minorities. It could be access to education, so they're not getting as good of jobs. I think sometimes it could be lifestyle. It could be awareness, not saving the money. I think, maybe in the queer community, there is less people maybe cohabiting together. Maybe more people are single. It's just a different norm, and that's where it becomes more complicated. As we know, it takes a lot of income, and it takes a lot of assets to get into a home. And, everyone has really the same access, but from a cultural perspective, maybe not everyone has that same, level in their life, if you know what I'm saying.
Sure, yeah.
And we're talking about jobs, we're talking about credit, we're talking about savings, we're talking about income. There's a lot of things that really go into homeownership, and not everything is equal.
Yeah. And we've had conversations in the past, and you talked about working in the industry itself, and that there are barriers, or have been barriers in your lifetime.
Certainly have been barriers.
Yeah.
And I've been doing this for 20 years.
Yeah.
I can tell you when I was doing applications, and if there were 2 guys or 2 girls in the application, underwriter would often come back to me to be like, what's the relationship here? Well, what does it matter what the relationship is? They're not married. Either they're together or they're friends or whatever. What does that relationship actually impact to the risk of the bank? But really, Todd, it really truly does. So they want to know what the relationship is, because if it's 2 friends, for example, buying a home together, if something goes sideways, that could put the lender in financial risk. So really, the underwriter wants to know if it's 2 men together or 2 women together, what that relationship is. If they're in a domestic partnership, or if they are common law, or if they are girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever the relationship is, if they're together, that actually is less risk for the lender than if 2 friends buy a property together. We know relationships break down all the time, and maybe 2 friends are actually safer
that's right.
than a relationship. And I'm not talking just gay relationships here. I'm talking just relationships in general.
Right.
As we know, like 50+%, I think.
Yeah.
And we had a family lawyer on here in February.
Yeah.
A huge percentage of relationships, whether that's marriages, domestic partnerships, common law, whatever, do break down.
Do you feel as though that I guess you probably don't want to pat yourself on the back, but do you feel as though you're a bit of a trailblazer, if not a trailblazer here in the city and in the business community?
Like, am I the only gay in the village is what you're asking? I don't know.
No, I'm not saying you're the only gay in the village, but what I'm saying is I think, well, I'll give you the credit. I think you have blazed a trail, and you have shown courage at a time 20 years ago when it wasn't easy to do so. And I think you deserve a lot of credit for that. You
know what? It was tough. And you know what? I've been criticized all the time. But you know what I always think? When people criticize me, it's either they want to be where I'm at, or there's some jealousy.
Yeah, that's right.
And I'm not perfect, Todd. Don't get me wrong. I've made lots of missteps personally in business. I'm not perfect. But the one thing that I will say is I am very resilient, and no one will argue with me that I'm not a really good mortgage broker.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So I've been consistent. I've done the same thing over and over again, and that does take a thick skin. So many times I see people, especially with social media, they're getting criticized, or, they're getting called out or whatever, and that they basically just hide. The one thing you can't do is you can't hide when things are going bad. You really need to get in front of it, and you need to double, triple down. And I've done that. And, I'm not perfect, but I've worked really hard, and I have a great team of people behind me. And I would not be here today if it wasn't for my business partners, the people that work on my team, and really, truly, truly my customers. We're talking like 40,000 customers here in HRM. We have a huge percentage of the market here, and they've supported me regardless of what my sexual orientation is. And, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them.
Well, I can honestly say in all of the interactions that you and I have had, and there have been, I would say, hundreds at this point when it comes to media.
We've probably done 100 shows.
Whatever
or more.
it is. And all of the times that I've had you on the show, and all the mentions that get on the air that you probably don't hear because you don't listen, obviously, all the time you're working. But a lot of people call the show and reference you. Somebody did that just today, as a matter of fact, brought your name up. Nobody's ever brought your name up in a derogatory way or been any homophobic type slander, at least not to me anyway. And perhaps they know what they'd get in return. But I think that speaks to something anyway.
I 100% agree. And, Todd, really in my business life, I haven't experienced that as well. Like, I've not had that negativity. Yeah, I've had some like weird questions and comments, and probably what I haven't seen is people just chose not to do business with me because they didn't like it.
Right.
Whatever. Who cares? Again, I'm not going to be for everyone. Just like you as a radio host,
I'm for everyone. Come on now.
You're not for everybody. I can tell you that right now. But I don't think
our producers over there are disagreeing with you.
Well, I don't know. I don't think my lifestyle is a deciding factor on mortgage finance.
Right. People want competence.
They want competence. And you know what? I think we've really built a brand and a business that has been around advice, and it's advice first.
Yeah.
We are identifying that we can support everybody. And I am aware enough that we're not going to be great for 100% of people, but we're great for a huge percentage. And I'm very, very proud of what I do for everyone, whether that's in the queer community, everyone across the board. The number one thing that we're worried about every single day is homeownership. And we want homeownership to be accessible to the most amount of people possible. And we want to make sure that we're providing really that best advice.
Yeah, and of course, it ties in, of course, with the theme of pride, right? Pride and homeownership. What else would you be more proud of than your home?
100%. Yeah. And that really means that when you own a home and you're putting down roots in the community, you're building that pride no matter what community you're a part of.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so tee up our guest coming up.
We have Blair Patterson from my team. He's
Yeah.
really an amazing mortgage broker. He actually moved to Halifax to come work for us, which, you know what, I'm very, very proud of. He's doing a great job. And we're going to answer some of these questions down on the street. And we're going to talk more about what does pride mean, what does pride in homeownership mean, and how can you love your home. If you've liked what you've heard and you want to learn more, feel free to visit us online at teamclinton.ca.